the science.
Suffice it that the blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled within these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, eyes gouged from bloody sockets, flesh burned black.
Please. You await the dead. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. What you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has on her tail.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
What's up, guys?
Hey.
We're late.
Yeah, very late.
Sorry, that's because
And there's no
our
music
guest is late. That's yeah. You didn't cue it up.
It's there it is.
There we go.
Okay.
It's the same music you've been hearing now for weeks and
The
weeks.
same repetitious.
It's Chuck's
droning.
fault this week,
Yeah, he was gonna make some loops for us, so
and he didn't do it.
so we get to blame him.
We blame Chuck. Everybody
Yeah.
phone in and tell Chuck how much he sucks. Can I say that on the radio?
That's mean.
That's all good.
Okay, yeah.
Is that allowable?
I don't know. Hope so.
Well, look. Anyway, our guest tonight.
It's always allowable unless you get caught. So,
Yeah. Well. Yeah, but we don't want.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. You're
All
right.
right. So, like I said, sorry we're late tonight, guys. Go ahead, Trent.
Our guest tonight is a ex-Freemason, ex-Satanist, ex-Mormon, and most importantly,
Ex-Wiccan and
ex-vampire.
yeah. Now he is a born-again Christian. His name is Bill Schnoebelen, and he'll be on our show here. He's running a little late. He's going to phone into the show, I think, in the next couple minutes.
Yeah, so we decided to go ahead and
Yeah, we
everything's-
were freaking out there because we couldn't get a hold of anybody over there. But yeah, it looks good now.
Yeah, they shot
so-
us an email and said he was on his way home. So.
Yeah, so he should be joining us soon. But,
You know.
I guess we'll just talk
the
about him
bull.
until he gets here.
Oh, okay.
Hey, you can kill the music now anytime. Now. It's kind of
Well,
aggravating.
but I like a little background noise. I mean, unless
Well,
you
Chuck
want
can
to
rap,
sing.
man.
All right, Chuck, start
No,
start
we're not
beatboxing.
gonna have any of that.
You don't want to start beatboxing? I stopped it there.
Yeah. But
you
you
Yeah.
wanted to fade it?
Yeah, I was trying to give the key.
He was trying to give the cue for fading. Trent, you got to watch for the finger.
Well, hold on. Let me
Watch for the finger,
Let me
man.
play it
Oh,
up again.
not that one.
And then I'll fade it. You want me to do that?
that's
you
okay.
want me to play it
Really.
and then
we're fine.
All right, fine.
All right, you can give us a call tonight, guys, at 800-960-2289. That's 800-960-2289, and you can call in and speak with ex-vampire Bill Schnoebelen about his experiences.
He's lived he has a DVD collection out that you can purchase on our website.
You can get the first hour for only 99
cents,
cents.
basically, and it's a pretty lengthy, comprehensive
9
volume.
hours.
And it's chock full of just a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of information about his life and his dealings with these clandestine,
Organizations.
secret, evil organizations.
Yeah.
You know, that's basically the impression. All these things are basically
Yeah.
evil. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, but you can find that on our website and download it for 99 cents.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's
what
on the
else.
front page. World of the
Yeah, it's
Unexplained.
right there. Interview with an ex-vampire.
And you can actually go to his website. It's www.billschnoebelen.com. Let me spell that for you.
Yeah.
It's SCHNOEBELEN.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go to click on the guest link on our page, worldoftheunexplained.com. I can't speak today. Click on the guests link, and you'll be able to see how you spell his name. I didn't know he had a website at the time, but you can check that out. Interview with an ex-vampire, Bill Schnoebelen.
Yeah,
I'm
we had
sorry.
some problems with the name too. We want to call him Schnoebelen or Schnoebelen.
Schnoebelen, I think it's Schnoebelen though. I think. Well, he'll correct us if we're wrong.
Yeah, that's basically it. But you know, so anyway, you gave the numbers out.
And we're thinking about bringing back the Crack House, but we still want to see more votes.
Yeah,
guys.
basically.
Because actually, we have a copy of Interview with an Ex-Vampire here that we're going to give out to one lucky Crack House caller if they'll call in when we play the show again.
Yeah, just you know,
we've got all kinds of. We got a book here, Linda S. Godfrey's American Werewolf book here that we want to give away. We got all kinds of stuff to give away. Goodies.
Yeah, that's true. Did we get rid of that Adam Go Rightly thing?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Actually, they're all good, but I mean, I was just curious if we still had that one. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's gone.
Well, anyway,
I think a guy in Fort Lauderdale won that.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember.
How's it going, Chuck?
Great, man.
Chuck, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Here you go. Jump on in.
Come on, Chuck. You know, don't be shy.
Let him meet.
Don't be
Chuck,
shy.
Let him meet Chuck Browder here.
This is our techie man, Chuck Browder. Go ahead, take it away.
Well, what do you want me to do with it, man? What direction are we
I
going?
want you to take it out and chop it up, man. Go ahead. Go do it.
Break it down.
Break it down. I mean, not really, you know. Anyway, go ahead.
That'd be embarrassing.
I'm waiting. Okay, Chuck. All right, Chuck. How was your day today? What did you do today?
Oh, not too much, man.
Oh.
Really, nothing to speak of.
Okay, well.
Chuck's what we call in this part of the world a trust fund, baby.
Oh my gosh, that's two slights against Chuck. That's not fair.
I'm getting hit from both ends.
I'm
the Brokeback Studio.
I was going to say, Brokeback Mountain style here, folks. All right, Chuck doesn't want to talk. So
fine. Well, we thought we'd give him a chance to have a little talking. Now.
Oh my God. The affiliates are on. Of course, I'd say that now.
Yeah.
So anybody that hates my comments, just call us here at 800-960-2289. Yeah. We will hang up on you if we feel the need.
Or maybe not. I don't know who's in control of the phone button.
I am.
So, maybe you'll temporarily not be.
800-960-2289. Give us a call, guys.
Or locally, 336-996-1596. Or the chat room. Get on our website, go to chat room, or Omnisound Radio. Oh.
No, that's probably Bill. Don't you love how the realism of that studio sound?
All right, hang on.
Bill, is that you?
No, he's. If you could phone him, he's at home now.
Oh, okay, that's great. Well, you're on the air now. Say hi. All right, well.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a great night for us. I'm gonna. God Almighty. All right, guys, we're gonna take a
short break to.
Actually, you know what? Let's send Chuck out to give old Bill a call here, and we're gonna do that, and so we can talk. Just like we normally do here, guys, because it's very important that we have an intimate relationship with our listeners.
We like to make music with our voice.
Oh, my God.
Okay,
maybe I should go to the break.
Look, I ripped that off from the Drew Carey Show, all right?
The Drew Carey Show?
Yeah,
okay. That's
a
a
long
pretty
time
good
ago.
show. Yeah.
I don't even know which one of the characters, but it seemed really funny, and maybe it's not, so...
We promise we're going to have a show.
Yeah.
We promise.
Any minute now.
Any minute now.
Any second. Seriously, we should play the music again.
Okay, yeah, here we go.
You know what I mean?
I'm gonna set you up here, Chuck.
Okay, Chuck is going to call our guest, Bill Schnoebelen.
Keep talking, Trent.
And apparently he's going to go outside, and I don't want to make a running commentary of this because, well, it's quite...
The play-by-play.
Well, a play-by-play, just like
Actually,
that.
we'll just do it from here.
Okay.
We've never cared about professionalism before. Why start now? That's what.
And all of you guys out there in Radio Land are
mute my
getting...
mic or something.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick up over there. Right?
Well, anyway, I'm muting Scott's mic now. And, yeah, unfortunately, it's just, one of these things happen. It doesn't happen often, but every now and again it comes up with a guest just doesn't arrive. We had one guest way back in the day basically get the wrong time zone. And also when we have people calling across the pond, that's Britain, then we have problems there with time differences.
We've got Bill.
Okay, Bill's on.
Bill, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. All right, guys, this is Bill. Is it Schnoebelen?
We just say Schnoebelen or Schnoebelen, either one. It's fine. It's a hard name to say.
Okay, well, we watched your video, and that's what it sounded like you were saying Schnoebelen, but we weren't sure, so we didn't want to mispronounce that.
Yeah, we want to...
Sure.
Okay, well, great. Well, Bill, I don't even know where to start. There's so much. Bill was a ex-Wiccan, an ex-Mason, an
Catholic priest.
Catholic priest. Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with all these. An ex-vampire, obviously, an ex-Satanist,
ex-Mormon,
and now an ex-Mormon, and now he's a born-again Christian.
Did we cover it all, Bill?
Well, no, but we got the big stuff.
Okay.
We got the big stuff.
All right, good.
Bill, wow. So tell us now, do you have your own ministry now?
Yes. We have With One Accord Ministries out of Dubuque, Iowa. And we've been around for really, I've been in the ministry for 20 years this month.
Okay.
So, and we do a lot of work on teaching about the Bible and apologetics and defending the faith.
So would you consider yourself a charismatic? Pentecostal?
No, Pentecostal though.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not real fond of the charismatic thing, but yeah, I like the Pentecostal thing.
Okay.
And I was saved in the Assemblies of God Church.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is good old time Pentecost, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anyway, well, you know, a lot of times I get on the show, I get on my soapbox a lot because I'm a Christian and I'm a Baptist, I guess, or non-denominational, whatever you want to call me. I was raised in a Baptist church, but and Trent's a Christian as well, and Chuck's our only atheist on board. No, I don't. I don't know what Chuck is.
And he's a communist.
No, but I get on my soapbox every now and then because. You know, I get mad at a lot of these paranormal shows that talk about, you know, that they're up for hearing anything in anybody's belief and saying that they're open-minded about it until you get someone that claims to be a born-again Christian on the show and then all of a sudden it's not popular.
Oh, yeah.
And I just say, if you're thinking that your mind is open, people, then listen to what we have to say here. And if you have a really, truly open mind, then you'll be able to hear anything.
Well, that's true.
Amen.
So this is Bill's take on this, and Bill's going to tell us all kinds of crazy stories. We're going to skip our first break tonight since we got him on a little late.
That's true.
But Bill, where do you want to start?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you would want to get in a little bit to my, of course, you know, my testimony or whatever, how I came from darkness to light, or if you want to just jump right into the deep end of the pool.
Scott, I say we should
let's jump in. Go
to the deep end of the pool, and then you can tell your testimony, you know.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, I guess basically I got into the occult. Oh, gee, now it's 33 years ago or more, and always been very much an overachiever, and got into witchcraft. White witchcraft is called Wicca, and then from there I went into spiritism. Both my wife and I were ordained spiritualist ministers of the group called the Alliance of Divine Love. So we were doing like trance channeling, you know, having spirit guides speak through us, that sort of thing. Just your common everyday stuff, you know.
Yeah, everyday stuff.
Of course, you know.
And anyway, then we moved to Milwaukee because at this time we were in the same city we're in now, Dubuque, because there was just at least 85 witches that wanted us to train them and to teach them how to be good little witches. And so when we went there, the guy who ran the bookstore, he was a little bit dark, not racially, but morally, and he turned us, or at least me, on to the Church of Satan, the Satanic Bible, stuff like that. So I got involved in that. Of course, I'm going through this real fast.
Oh, yeah.
Then the other thing that happened is my wife and I had gone down to Arkansas for 3 months to study under the Grand Master Druid of North America, learn how to be druids. And we were ordained as Druidic High Priest and High Priestess at that time. And this fellow, he told us, he happened to be a 33rd degree Mason in addition to being a Grand Master Druid. And he told us that the Masons would be a really good thing to get involved with because there's a lot of good Luciferian information in the Masonic Lodge. And he just said, well, if you ever get a chance, join the Masonic Lodge. Well, when we moved to Milwaukee, I had no knowledge of the Masonic order because I'd been raised Catholic, and of course, back then Catholics didn't mess with the Masons. It was considered a excommunicatable offense to be a Mason if you were a Roman Catholic, and so I knew nothing. But one of the guys in our coven, his dad was an officer in a lodge, and so he sponsored me, and so I went into the Masons, became a Master Mason. I think it was in 1976. And the strange stuff, which might surprise some of your listeners, is the same time I was studying to be a priest in the old Roman Catholic Church. So these are like parallel tracks, if you will, that I'm going on at the same time. You could say I had spiritual attention deficit disorder or something. I don't know, but what happened is, and this is going to sound really funny, but when we were witch high priests, we were down in Chicago for a while doing training, and that was the year The Exorcist came out.
Okay.
Of course, again, mind you, I was raised Catholic. So we thought, let's go see this. And there was 3 or 4 different high priests from various traditions and high priestesses, and we all went to this movie. And big, huge downtown Chicago theater. And it scared the living daylights out of everybody in the theater. I mean, this lady who was this real high-level high priestess that was next to me, not my wife, she like was clinging to my hand to the point that I thought she was going to give me a hand fracture. She was so scared. And I had nightmares from this movie.
Oh, so did I.
for years.
Yeah.
And the guy who was one of the fellows who was with us happened to have issues with epilepsy, and the film was so intense that night it actually caused him to have a grand mal seizure.
Jeez.
So this was really, really heavy stuff. And what that film did is it kind of, because see, when I kind of skipped over my childhood. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a priest. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a priest. When I was in college, I wanted to be a priest. But I got derailed from that by some professors who were kind of into the New Age before the New Age even existed. So anyway, long story short, I was scared back into wanting to be a Catholic priest because I figured, hey, if I come up against some kind of creepy demon like this that's going to spray me with pea soup and head twist around and all this kind of junk, I'm going to want to be able to have this power, you know. I was sort of like Simon Magus, you know, in the Book of Acts. I was a sorcerer, but I wanted this power. And plus there was the fact that I was really sincerely a believer in the Catholic Church all my life, and it was like my lifelong dream to be a priest. So anyway, on top of I was reading the Satanic Bible, being a witch high priest, studying to be a master mason, I also found this fellow who was a priest in the old Roman Catholic Church, and he was willing to try and train me that I could end up being a priest in the old Roman Rite. So I was.
No, is this? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bill. Is this?
No, that's okay.
Is this the guy that you mentioned in the video? The man who was who you went back to his apartment and saw the pictures move?
Yeah.
No, that was later.
Okay.
This fellow was just a more or less, well, I hesitate to use the word normal, old Roman Catholic bishop. And I probably should just explain quickly, the old Roman Catholic Church is not the same as the Roman Catholic Church.
You mean after Vatican II?
Yeah, it's pre-Vatican II. It goes back to the 1700s in Holland. And it's like a kind of like, I don't know, like the Orthodox rites. And so it has holy orders, it has all the sacraments of the Catholic Church. But to this day, it is not under obedience to the Pope.
Okay.
So, and they allow a married clergy. And that was partly why I went that route.
Oh, right.
Because I was at that time married.
Yeah.
So that happened. And so here I'm doing all these things, and I'm getting deeper and deeper into the darkness because, of course, all of these different things were all leading me in the same direction, in a downward trajectory. And I ended up joining the Church of Satan. I ended up becoming a hardcore Satanist, because really the Church of Satan is just like entry-level Satanism. And then at the same time, this fellow you mentioned earlier who lived in Chicago, who was a Gnostic archbishop and primate, he consecrated me a bishop and simultaneously trained me in being a voodoo ungan.
God.
So, I mean, I know this sounds like, you know, what kind of insane people are these? But this guy was one of the creepier people I've ever met in my life, and he really, you know, that's what he did. He was a very devout Anglican clergyman. He was ordained a deacon in the Episcopal Church, where I'm in Anglican Episcopal, is kind of the same thing. And yet he was also a Gnostic bishop and a voodoo hierophant, and he opened doorways into hell and called demons up and all kinds of bizarre stuff. So there's an ability here, which I think your listeners may not fully understand because they're normal.
I don't know about all that, Bill.
Well, yeah, you never know. Anyhow, of being able to hold all of these different, at least apparently contradictory theological concepts at the same time, because people look at my story and they, you know, like we published a timeline in our very first book, Mormonism's Temple of Doom, where we explain, okay, this is when he became a priest, this is when he became a Wiccan, this is when he did this, da-da-da-da. And people said, this is nuts. How could anybody do this and not be crazy? And, of course, there's some people that thought I was crazy. But there's some people that think I still am. But anyhow, the point is you're able to hold all these things because, you know, there's this doctrine within New Age spirituality, which, again, didn't even exist at the time I was into this, that says that all paths lead to the top of the mountain. So you can be a Buddhist, and I did that too. You know, you can be a Hindu, you can be a witch, you can be a Satanist, you can be a Catholic, you can be a voodoo priest, And all of these things all will lead you up to the light, the glorious light. And, of course, what nobody understands who's into this stuff is that light is Lucifer.
Yeah, that was an interesting point you had mentioned in the DVD about where, in one of your most intense moments with the dark side, where you felt like it was just a blinding light that you were seeing inside your mind. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, I had an encounter, and I don't know what else to call it because it was so intense and so bizarre, where I was like taken out of my body. I mean, you look at it one way, it could be like a UFO abduction. You look at it another way, it was some kind of occult thing. But here I was taken to one of the moons of Saturn, into this temple, and there were all these people chanting blasphemies and all kinds of junk. And what happened is I was laid down on this altar, and this great being came up to me from a throne, and he basically had giant, like 20, 25 feet tall, and he had these long talons on his fingers, and he came up to me and rolled one of those talons into my forehead, right where they talk about the third eye, and this searing white light filled my mind, and it was like molten lead or white hot steam. I mean, it just was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. And at that moment, that was the Luciferian initiation. That was me being quote unquote enlightened. Huh. And when you read, and some New Age writers talk about this, like David Spangler and others, that you have to, first you attain Christ consciousness, and then you attain Luciferian consciousness. And of course, that's blasphemy to claim that Lucifer's consciousness is higher than Christ.
Yeah.
But they see Lucifer, of course, the word in Latin means light bearer. And even in the Hebrew Bible, the word for Lucifer is Halel, which means bright, shining one.
Oh, we have to remember that Lucifer was, one of God's greatest angels at one time.
One of the most beautiful,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So, when people, you hear New Agers talk about, oh, well, we just surround ourselves with light. Well, that's all well and good, because, of course, it does say in the Bible that the Almighty is light, God is light. But on the other hand, you've got to ask, which light? Is it his light, or is it the light of Lucifer?
It's a deception. I remember Trent talking about weeks ago where, the best, it's a commonly heard, it's commonly heard phrase, though, the devil's best trick is tricking everyone and not thinking he's ever existed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, either to trick people, I think it was C.S. Lewis that did this, either to trick people into not believing he even exists, or to trick them into taking him overly seriously and giving him more credit and more power than he actually has.
Now, you talk...
Two errors you have to steer between if you want to be a balanced believer.
Now, you talk about earlier in the DVD about how your magic was working a lot of times, and I think you even made a quote to the movie Little Big Man where you said, well, sometimes the magic works and sometimes it doesn't, but that by it working and by you seeing the effects of the magic as while you were a Wiccan working on some of the, and a Satanist, some of these curses you were throwing at people, that intensified in your mind the idea that it's definitely working, and I'm behind this power, I'm the source. I need to
pursue it further.
Yeah, I can control it. When in actuality, it was just a greater deception from the from the truth. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, and it's just like if you're a Christian, and I mean, I know different Christians believe different things about this, but if you lay your hands on someone and pray for them to be healed of some serious ailment, and they are, that's a real boost to your faith. That's only human.
Oh yeah.
And then it's the same way with this, is that every now and then the devil would, so to speak, throw us a bone. We'd have either someone get miraculously healed that we'd send energy to in a circle, or we'd have someone, one person we did a ritual for because she was having problems with sexual dysfunction, and that was healed. Other times we would curse people, and all sorts of bizarre stuff would happen. And, so we saw enough things along the way to believe, there's something real here. But the problem is, because of the lack of good, solid spiritual training, because, of course, when you're raised a little Catholic in the 1950s, you don't get any training in spiritual warfare and understanding spiritual discernment.
Yeah.
And so I just assumed all of this good stuff was coming from God. And, of course, it wasn't, because we're warned that Satan can appear to be an angel of light and that he can appear to do wondrous things and miraculous things, and some of them are even real. But yet, it's coming from a fiendish source right from the pit of hell.
That's true. And also these miraculous things that from the results of magic, they backfired. The devil gave you something and he took away more. Is that correct?
That's often the case. You never get anything without paying a price. And I ended up getting involved with drugs and getting involved with all kinds of addictive behaviors, and my life was basically out of control. And it wasn't until this lady started praying for me that really I thought I was going to end up in prison or something.
Right. If you want to call tonight and talk to Bill, the number is 1-800-960-2289, and the local number is 336-996-1596. And don't forget about going into our chat room, making a name, and jumping in and asking questions there if you don't feel like talking over the air. Scott?
Okay. Bill, let's. There's so many interesting stories here. I mean, just too many. Obviously, you've got a 9-hour interview on a DVD, and we're trying to cover the highlights. Yeah, it's a great DVD. You can get that.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You can get that on our website, worldlyunexplained.com. Just click on the big banner ad on the side of the front page, or you can download right now, guys, the first hour of this thing for 99 cents. It's only $1. And if you like it, which we know you will, you can grab the rest of it directly from these guys. Interview with an ex-vampire, and we're going to get into that later about you becoming a vampire, Bill. But what we want to talk about now is, the Freemasons. Let's hit on that a little bit. Now I know my grandfather was a Freemason. My uncle was a Freemason at one point in time. I guess once a Mason, always a Mason. I don't know how that works. He's never talked about it, but. I've been invited to join the Masons when I was in law school. I didn't take them up on that, but there's a lot of people I know that are Masons and Freemasons. Freemasonry is something, especially nowadays, that you hear a lot about, and you hear, the big secret underlying it all. What can you tell us about your experience as a Freemason?
Well, of course, and I want to preface all this by saying that the vast majority of Masons are fine men. I mean, they're not perverts or creeps or anything like that, and they don't really know what they're involved in. I mean, they got into this thing usually because a relative, like you say, your grandfather was in it or whatever, and they figure, oh, well, if my grandpa was in it or my dad was in it or my uncle was in it and they're good men, there can't be anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
That's how they look at it. And, of course, that's in the normal realm, that's perfectly sensible. But the problem is that the devil is such an excellent counterfeiter that what he does is he creates things that, because remember, that's the essence of a counterfeit, like a $20 bill. It looks just like the real thing, but yet there's something wrong with it. And what happens with the Masons is that actually Masonry, and they actually say this in their rituals, is based on ancient fertility cults, the ancient mystery religions of like Greece and Rome and Egypt. And in fact, interestingly enough, the lodge I was involved in for most of my Masonic career was Kilburn Lodge number 3, FNAM in Milwaukee. And if you went inside that lodge, all the architecture was Egyptian. I mean, they had those various winged globes and ibises and pyramids and stuff all over the place. You would have thought walking into this place that you were in an Egyptian temple. So anyway, what the official word on it is that Masonry, they say, is a system of morality veiled in allegory. That's the official definition, which is suitably vague and nebulous. But actually what it is, it's a system of, the basis is 3 degrees where you learn secret signs and symbols that go way back probably thousands of years, and they relate to the idea of building temples. Now, that all sounds relatively benign, but the problem is you understand what a fertility cult is, and this is where the Da Vinci Code and everything comes in. the idea that these ancient pagans worshipped sex. They worshipped the procreative power of man and woman. And so all of the symbols in Masonry revolve around that. And the one unique thing about the creator God of the Bible is that he is the only God that I'm aware of out there, at least before the time of Judeo-Christianity, that wasn't a sexual entity. God does not have sexual parts, unless you're, of course, a Mormon. But anyway, normally, the Almighty is not thought of that way. But all these old pagan gods and goddesses were doing that. They were marrying each other. They were fornicating with each other. They were doing things a mink breeder wouldn't even tolerate. And over again, sexuality is a critical part of all this, because primitive ancient peoples looked at the ability of a man and a woman to come together and produce a baby as this awesome thing. And it is an awesome thing. I'm not trying to take away from that. But on the other hand, they tried to deify it. Like Paul says in Romans 1, they worship the creature instead of the creator. And so, like, as an example of this, if you were to go to the nation's capital and you would see the monument to our nation's most famous Mason, George Washington, you would see that it's a giant obelisk, which is a phallic symbol. And it's the largest obelisk in the world. And if you go into cemeteries, you'll find sometimes Masonic headstones that are smaller versions of the same thing. They might be 6 or 8 foot tall obelisks. And that's because that's the symbol of the god of Masonry. The god of Masonry is basically the phallus. Now, what you need to understand is if you look in the Old Testament, there's all these gods like Baal and Chemosh and these various gods of the people around, Dagon or whatever, and all of them are sexual beings. All of them have female consorts. They all are engaging in sex and all of that. And so Masonry is just a modern-day version of that. And the other thing you need to understand about Masonry is that it's a mystery religion, which means the secret stuff you don't get to know unless you join it. Now, of course, today, in the last 50 years or so, people like me and others have written books. Even before I was even born, books have been written exposing all the ritual work of Blue Lodge Masonry. So its secrets, at least on the surface, are out there. You can read them in the Congressional Record. But yet the symbolism that's behind these secrets is very deep and very much related to sexuality. And so just like ancient Israel was constantly being tempted to go into Baal worship or Ashtarte or, Chemosh of the Moabites, whatever, so nowadays modern-day people who profess to be Christians are being drawn into this modern-day Baal worship, which is the Lodge. But yet they don't know it, because none of this is overtly discussed. If you have a subtle mind, or if you know your Bible, you can look at it and see, oh yeah, I see how this could be like Baal worship. But most people don't get that.
Well, tell us, Bill, tell us about the initiation ceremony you went through when you were a Mason.
Okay, well, the most benign one, even, first degree, entered apprentice. You're made to be divested of all metal. They even make you take your wedding ring off. And you are stripped down to your skivvies. They put you in these blue jammies with your breast bare, and they put a cable tow around your neck, which is like a blue rope, and then you're blindfolded. And you're led to the door of the lodge, and you knock on the door 3 times. And someone from within, and you don't know what's going on here. I mean, you're blindfolded. You have no idea what to expect. And the person says, "Who comes here?" And the guy who's leading you says for you, Mr. Bill Schnoebelen, who has long been in darkness and now seeks to be brought to light, to receive a part in the rights and benefits of his worshipful lodge, erected to God and dedicated to the holy saints John, as all brothers and fellows have done before. Now, here's my point right up front. If you're a Christian, you're standing there and you're saying, I have long been in darkness and now seek to be brought to light. And yet supposedly you have, Jesus, the light of the world, living in your heart. Now, what a blasphemous thing to say. So right there at the door of the lodge, you've, as it were, without realizing it, denied Christ. Then, the other thing that happens is you go in and you're led around the lodge, and you're stopped with a sword pointed at your breast. Actually, it's not. I'm sorry, it's not a sword. That's something else. It's like a pointed instrument. I think it's the compass. Actually, is pressed on your breast, and you're challenged, and you're prayed for, and then you go through all these ordeals, and then finally, you made the kneel at this altar in the center of the lodge, and you don't know what's all around. For all you know, you could be in the midst of a bunch of wackos, because you're still blindfolded. And you made a kneel on this thing, and you place your hands on top of and underneath this giant Bible that's on the altar. It's like a pew Bible, like you see in some churches. And then you make this oath. You're led through this blood-curdling oath by the worshipful master. And at the end of basically the substance of the oath is that you will not reveal the secrets of Masonry to anybody. In this case, the apprentice degree. And at the end of all of this, and it's a long, very verbose, legal-sounding oath, and at the end you say, "In all this I most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear to keep and perform the same, binding myself under no less a penalty than that of having my throat cut across, my tongue torn out by its roots, and buried in the sands of the sea, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours, should I ever knowingly violate my entered apprentice obligation, so help me God, and keep me steadfast in the due performance of the same." Now, think about that. You've just sworn that you're going to basically be murdered if you reveal the secrets of this ritual.
Yeah.
And down through the years, many men have been murdered for either failing the lodge or for revealing its secrets. And I have personally had many death threats. Of course, I have a lot of people mad at me, so I can't necessarily blame the Masons. I mean, it could have been the Mormons or the witches or whoever.
Satanists.
Take it like, in a delicatessen, take a number, But anyway, so this is a blood-curdling oath, and that's the nicest one. I mean, as you go up the ladder of Masonry, there's stuff about being disemboweled and about having the top of your head claven off and your brains exposed to rays. And this is just really wonderful stuff.
Wow.
And here's the thing. Imagine if you're a Christian, because understand that thousands of Protestants are Masons. 40% of Baptist pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention are Masons. Can you imagine being a Christian and sitting through something like that and making that vow and then sealing it by saying, "So help me God"? Especially because if you know the scriptures at all, you know that in Matthew 5:34 through 37, Jesus said that we are not to swear oaths. He says, "Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay, for anything else comes from the evil one." So here you are. You're a Christian, whether you're a lay person or a deacon or elder or even a pastor. And I even know bishops in the Methodist and the Episcopal churches that are Masons.
Yeah.
And they're kneeling at this altar and they're swearing this oath right in direct violation of the words of the Lord.
Now, you were a 90th degree. I mean, a lot of people hear that and they're like, a 90th degree. I thought there were only 33 degrees in Masonry. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and that is, of course, a commonly held misconception. In American Masonry, there's only 33 degrees. But in European Masonry, there's 2 or 3 other branches of Masonry which do exist over here in the States where they have higher degrees. And I was in, among other things, I was in the rite of Memphis Mizraim, which has 97 degrees. Wow. And so I got up to the 90th degree in that particular rite. But in order for that to happen, a gentleman had to come all the way over here from Paris in order to preside over my initiation and a couple of other people's. So that's just it. Masonry is like an onion where there's a layer and then a layer and a layer and a layer, and the people that are the average, pawns, if you will, the typical Mason who just joins a lodge because his uncle was in it, and it's a good way to get out of the house and away from the wife for a night and play, pinochle after the meeting. Because that's what most of these guys that I knew were. They were harmless. Most of them were Protestants. They were church-going men. They didn't have a clue. Even though up on the second floor of the lodges I was a member of, there were books that if they were to have read them, they would have found out that Masonry is Luciferian.
Now, how exactly? How does one actually rise in the ranks of Masonry? I mean, is it? I don't want to oversimplify, but it's not like Boy Scouts where you complete some tasks and get a merit badge. You know, I'm assuming it's a little more elaborate.
Somewhat like that in the lower levels because there are expectations. Okay. You know, I mean, this may have changed because I've been out of the Masons now for 30 years. But, well, no, not 30 years, but 25 years. And when I went into it, it was exactly 30 years ago. It was 76. You had to memorize, and you can probably tell by some of the things I'm saying. I still have this stuff in my head. You had to memorize is what's called memory work, and you had to memorize page after page after page of ritual, and then at the end, like say for first degree, and before you're allowed to go to second degree, you have to stand up in front of the whole lodge, and your mentor in the lodge, who's called your poster. And this guy will come over to your house and he sits with you for hours on end, and because none of this is allowed to be written down, it's all having to be done orally. So he'll repeat something and you repeat it after him, and by the time you're done, you've got probably 10 or 15 minutes of this memory work that you've mastered. And unless you can do that and stand up before the lodge and say all of that stuff and pretty much get it right, they won't let you go on to second degree.
Wow.
So, and then it's also true of second degree, and it's also true of third degree. Now, beyond that, it's different. Once you become a Master Mason, which is third degree, then it's more or less on a matter of just paying the money, and like people say, oh, wow, you were a 32nd degree Mason. Well, yeah, but they don't know that all you have to do to be, well, it was probably more expensive today, but in my day, it was like $150, and then you go and for like 3 or 4 weekends, you sit through all these excruciatingly boring rituals at the Scottish Rite Cathedral and just see hour after hour ritual drama, and then you're a 32nd degree Mason.
Wow.
Now, in the old days, probably in the days of my grandfather, they had to do memory work for those too. But as of now, because, see, you've got to realize Masonry is dying on the vine. I mean, the average age of a Mason now, the last I read, is 60.
Wow.
And because most young men don't want to do this, because, and I make the joke, I say, I wish it was because there was a mighty revival in the land, and all these people are realizing Masonry is evil, and they're falling on their faces and they're repenting, but I think it's more because of cable television. You know,
cable TV killed the Masons.
I mean, if you sit through a Masonic Lodge meeting, it's about as interesting as watching paint dry.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And, I mean, if you understand the nuances, and I made every effort to do that. You know, I read the books. You know, just like as many of us know, there's Christians that hardly ever read the Bible. And there's other Christians that read it every day. Well, it's the same way. There's some Masons that just join it, and then that's really what they do. They may not even hardly ever go to the meeting until they die, and then they get a Masonic funeral. But, you know, in the other side of it, there's some Masons that really do read this stuff, and I did read it. And if you understand the nuances, then you can sit there and see that there's like 2 or 3 different levels deep of symbolism in all of this stuff that they do. But it'd be so funny. I'd be sitting there at lodge meetings, and 2 or 3 of the guys around me, within 10 minutes, you'd hear them snoring. You know, because it's just that boring.
Well, Bill, I hate to interrupt you, but we're gonna have to take a short break. If you'll hang on the line with us, we're speaking with Bill Schnoebelen. Call us up here live, 800-960-2289. We'll be right back on World of the Unexplained after this.
This is Eileen Geek from The Exorcist. You are listening to World of the Unexplained.
And we're back. Sorry about that. With Bill Schnoebelen. Bill, you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Wow. We were talking on the break about the. Well, never mind. We'll get into that later, maybe. The Masonic thing. We had pretty much ran the thing with let's see, I really, there's so much stuff and it's really hard. I want you to tell
we
our...
only have about an hour left.
I know, we only have an hour left.
We're going to talk about vampirism.
Yeah, we do, but I also want to talk about that experience you had with the the priest and the pictures moving.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting scenario. Go ahead with that one if you know.
Well, sure. I through reading a book, I found out about this fellow who was down in Chicago, who was an extremely high-level Satanic and Gnostic and Adept. He was like a follower of Aleister Crowley and all sorts of stuff. And so I contacted him and wondered if I could kind of be his pupil. And he said, oh, sure, you know. And, of course, even over the phone, he kind of sounded like the cat licking his lips. And so we went down there to meet him, my wife and I. And then I went down there a few times and spent the weekend in this guy's apartment as a part of my training. And, oh, I'll tell you. He had this high-rise apartment overlooking Lake Michigan in downtown Chicago. And this guy is still alive today, as far as I know. He's got an internet presence and the whole bit. But
oh, wow.
And I was spending the night. He had like this futon out in the living room, and it was facing this floor-to-ceiling window that looked out over Lake Michigan. It was a gorgeous view. He had all of these plants. And he called them his Transuguthian plants because he'd water them with water that had all these strange things in it, including his own seminal fluid.
That's wonderful.
Wow. He'd do magical incantations over the plants, and they look really bizarre.
You've got my producer dying laughing over in the corner.
I'm trying to be delicate.
Yeah, I know.
I understand.
Anyway,
go ahead.
And so they'd like move around. You know, we'd be sitting there talking, you know, having drinks or whatever, and I'd look and the plant would be in a different position. You know, I started having visions of, you know, that old TV show, The Addams Family, where the plants would reach out and they try and strangle you.
Oh, yeah.
So then he says, okay, well, it's time to go to bed now and everything. And so he went out to his bedroom, and I'm sitting out here in this living room, like about 5 feet away from these really totally alien-looking plants. And on top of that, he had all these paintings on the wall that were his own work, and they were these oils of these various obscene gods and goddesses, and they were very primitive and very voodoo-looking, and he called them, and you can actually, there's books where you can see some of these paintings in print. They're in black and white, but there's one book that's called The Night Side of Eden by Kenneth Grant, and he actually has some of this guy's pictures in it. And anyway, he called them Precambrian pornography. That was his term for them.
Okay.
And so he told me, don't worry about the paintings. They're not going to hurt me. Which, of course, I thought, oh, gee, that sounds real encouraging. So I'm laying on this futon, and I keep hearing these, like, rustling sounds. And, you know, I turn on the light by the futon, and the plants would have, like, moved around and stuff, and I'd look on the wall, and the paintings had moved.
Oh, man.
And he believed, like, and again, this is this weird blend of occultism and Satanism and Catholicism and Orthodoxy. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with, like, the Eastern Orthodox churches, but they have the thing, like a Greek Orthodox church, they have a thing that they hang on the wall. It's called an icon, and it's like a picture of a saint or of Jesus or whatever. Well, they call these windows into heaven.
Okay. And
the artist paints them with great prayerfulness, and the artist actually puts some of his own blood into the paint. And it's believed that these icons, and this is in most Orthodox, like Russian Orthodox, Greek, whatever, that these are like windows into heaven. They're gateways. They're spiritual doorways. So much so that a devout Orthodox couple, if they have an icon in their bedroom, when they're going to make love, they turn the icon to the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, I've heard of that one, Bill. Go ahead.
So anyway, this is like a perverse version of that, because he warned me that these paintings were like doorways into other universes. Okay. And what was funny is that not only did the paintings move around, but the things in the paintings moved around. In other words, like this one thing, I remember it was supposed to be the black goddess of space, and it was like this amorphous blob of black gunk with eyes in it, and it was tilted to the right. Well, I'd wake up and I'd open my eyes and turn on the light, and it was tilted to the left.
Huh.
And I'll tell you, I've been scared a few times in my life, but I was never more terrified that night. Because see, again, I was a Catholic priest at this time. I was a Third Order Franciscan, and I had my rosary. I prayed that rosary all night. I don't think I had a wink of sleep. And I was hiding under the covers just like a little kid because I was scared to death that if I poked my head out from those covers, that this plant would either grab me, or that these paintings would devour me, or suck me into some alternate universe or whatever. And the funny thing was that this guy comes out in the morning, and all dressed and chipper looking. He says, he was also homosexual, by the way. And he says, well, how did you sleep? And I said, oh, peachy. Probably see the circles under my eyes. And he says, well, he says, let's have cocktails and then we'll say the divine office, which is like the breviary that the Roman Church and the Anglican Church says. So, it was like this weird blend of Catholic and Anglo-Catholic piety with Satanism and voodoo and Aleister Crowley and the Black Goddess of Space and you name it.
So when you're talking about when he was talking about gateways to other dimensions, Bill, a lot of this to me sounds very very Lovecraftian. You know what I'm talking about, like Cthulhu and stuff like that. Now,
yeah.
When he was, is that the dimensions he's talking about to these so-called old ones, or just hell?
Yeah. See, I don't know if you recall, I used the word Transuguthian before.
Yes, I've heard that.
Plants were Transuguthian plants. Well, that's a word out of Lovecraft.
Right.
Because Yuggoth is the word in the ancient tongue of the great old ones for Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this, even though most people understand H.P. Lovecraft was a fictional writer who lived in the beginning of the last century and wrote these kind of weirdly Victorian, creepy stories, they seem to be based on reality. And one of the highest level black magicians in the world, Kenneth Grant, who's the head of the OTO, which means he's the heir to Aleister Crowley and his organization, basically documents in one of his books how many of the deities, these great old ones that are in Lovecraft, are very similar to these ancient Typhonian gods of like Egypt and Sumer and Babylon. So, and the other thing you need to understand is there was a fellow who did a doctoral dissertation on Lovecraft. I think he was involved with a university in Rhode Island, and Lovecraft was a resident of Providence. And he found out that Lovecraft's grandfather was an Egyptian Freemason. Now, that's not meaning he was Egyptian. It means he was in Egyptian Masonry. Now, Egyptian Masonry is the same thing I was in, the Rite of Memphis Mizraim, that 97-degree thing.
Yeah, right.
And he documented that this guy was actually involved in very high-level occultism. And he speculated in this article that Lovecraft may have inherited some very rare and disturbing books from his grandfather, just like one of the characters in his stories. Because Lovecraft himself lived his life as if the stuff that was in his books was true. Like he would never, for example, go into a subway or anywhere that was underground. He would never, even though he lived in Providence, he would never go within the sight of the ocean. Gee, we just had a thunderclap out here.
Wow,
okay. Well,
how appropriate.
Tell us about
anyhow, yeah, you're right. And a lot of the magic that we did when we were into this more heavy-duty stuff was very much out of what is called the Cthulhu mythos.
Right.
Well, tell us about the Necronomicon. Now, you told us that you actually got a hold of some of the simpler, or some of the less, I guess, the less dangerous portions of that. Tell us about that. And then the next thing I want to know is you say there's like maybe 5 or 6 of these copies still in existence. Who has them? What are they? Are they actually, the old myths that we hear are made out of human skin?
Yeah, like the Mad Arab wrote it. Once again, referring to Lovecraft, talking about how the Necronomicon was written in human skin and all that.
The mythos. But, well, the thing I saw was a very old, creepy-looking book that looked like it was made on parchment. And it was held in a very special library in downtown Chicago. And I was told there were 6 copies around in various parts of the English-speaking world, and there may have been others like in Arabia and the Middle East, but we knew there were 6, and all these 6, I think one of them was in a museum, and the others were all in the hands of very high-level occultists.
Huh.
And basically, it was rituals to unlock these gateways, these doorways in the other dimensions. And the legends of this whole thing are that there's these vast, omnipotent gods that exist beyond the fringe of time and space. And that if you do the right ritual and say the right words, that you can open this doorway and these things will come through and they will retake the world back from the God of the Bible. And we were told that the God of the Bible was like in knee pants, so to speak, when these beings bestrode the cosmos. Which, of course, is not true. Whatever they are, they're some sort of high-level demon or fallen angel or whatever.
Okay.
But naturally, Satan is a braggart, and he's a boaster, and so he's going to try and make these things appear to be very real.
Okay.
Tell us about the actual. Did you try any of these spells?
Any of these what?
Did you try any of the spells out of this Necronomicon?
Oh, yes. Yes, we did a lot of them. In fact, oddly enough, the sequel of the Satanic Bible actually has one authentic Lovecraft ritual in it. It's called the Satanic Rituals, is the name of the book. And there's actually a real, the call to Cthulhu is in that book. And it's authentic. And so we actually did that on the shores of Lake Michigan, and we got results.
Okay, wow. tell us about it.
Yeah.
Well, now you could say, oh, well, this guy just took LSD, or he smoked too many of them funny cigarettes from Mexico, or whatever, But the fact of the matter is, our whole coven saw this, and we were standing. It was like in the middle of the night, 1 or 2 in the morning, because it had to be at just the right astrological time, and it was real cold because it was like either early spring or whatever, and we were doing this, call to Cthulhu, and I'm not going to say the words, but and all of a sudden the waves started getting more wild, and they were crashing. It was just like something out of a movie, and we got scared, because believe it or not, even witches sometimes get scared, because these waves were getting higher, and the sea was, well, not the sea, but the lake was like frothing and bubbling in a way that was very uncharacteristic. So we climbed into our, about enough 2 carloads of us, and we started driving back to our apartment. As we looked back over our shoulder, we all saw this thing rising up out of the lake that was like, it actually dwarfed the Marine National Exchange Bank building, which is like a 50-story high skyscraper. And it was like this mass of tentacles and, shapeless goo and whatever that was, just not really easy to describe. And it just rose up out of the water and hovered there for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then kind of smashed back. It was sort of like you see these pictures of these great whales rising up out of the sea and then crashing down into them again.
Oh, yeah.
And it literally shook the city. I mean, we were by that time a couple blocks away driving in our cars, and we could feel the concussion.
No, what would have happened if you guys had stayed there?
Well, I'm afraid we probably would have been lunch or maybe a midnight snack. But, because if you understand the way these beings are, they are beyond any concept of good and evil. They just look at us the way we look at an ant farm. And they hate us because we're children of God. And I personally believe that these are fallen angelic beings that have been around so many millennia that the longer they're around and the further they get from the Almighty, the uglier and the weirder looking they get.
Huh.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'll tell your listeners, and this is how dangerous all this stuff has gotten in the last 2 years. If you want to get a very good idea of what I saw rising out of the lake, go rent the movie Hellboy and look at the last 10 minutes of it.
Huh.
Because whoever made that movie understood the totality of Lovecraftian metaphysics and how to do Transuguthian magic.
Well, that's pretty heavy stuff. And if you guys want to talk to Bill tonight about these sorts of things, the number is 1-800-960-2289, and the local number here is 336-996-1596. Also, don't forget the chat room where you can hop in and answer a question. Don't be shy, guys.
Yeah, give us a call. Give us a call. Bill would be more than happy to talk to you.
I'm scaring everybody off.
Maybe.
Well, Scott, we don't have a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I know. I want to
vampirism.
Yeah, let's hop into vampirism, Bill.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Tell us what happened. Tell us about your initiation ceremony into the world of the well, not really undead, because you weren't really undead yet. You were kind of I don't know. I don't know how
vampire in training. Go ahead and explain.
Yeah, explain this.
I was a vampire with trainer wheels. Anyway, well, you see, you get up to a certain point in the Brotherhood, Satanism, whatever, and you cross what is called the abyss. And if you don't do it right, it ends up destroying your soul for all eternity. And then once you get across that abyss, you become what is called a Magister Templi, Master of the Temple. And at that point, you have to make a choice, at least in the system that I was in. You either have to choose to become a lycanthrope or a vampire. And a lycanthrope is like a shapeshifter. The best known would be like a werewolf.
Yeah.
Now, I had heard what it was like to be a werewolf, and I didn't want to do that because it's very horrific and very painful and all of that, and I'm not really a pain freak. So I decided I'd rather be a vampire because, I kind of always thought vampires were sexy and, the whole walking around with black capes on and all that kind of appealed to the dramatist in me. So I said that's what I want to do. So my superiors took me down to this church in Chicago, which was a kind of a renegade branch of the Russian Orthodox Church. And it was totally given over to the Nosferatu, which is the Romanian word for the undead. And in the course of that, I was introduced to the person who would be my initiator. And I was put on a level of training. I was given certain herbs to take. I was given certain vitamins to take. And at the same time, I was taught these various disciplines: meditation, spells, incantations, whatever. And then at the end of a certain period, I was taking increasing amounts of cocaine. And I was taking so much cocaine that it would have killed me.
Wow.
Had it not been for all of the demonic stuff that was going on within me. Because if you're demon possessed, you have a much higher tolerance for drugs. Like one of my satanic mentors, he could go through like 3/5 of Jack Daniels and hardly even show signs of intoxication.
Good Lord. Wow.
So anyway, at one point, my initiator came to me, and basically he slit open his chest, and I had to drink blood from his chest.
Wow.
And that transfers this virus, quote unquote, which it is. It's a spiritual virus from him to me, just like, you can get HIV if you were drinking the blood of someone who was HIV positive. So anyway, that started a transmutation within me, and I began to lose my appetite. I couldn't eat anything. If I went out in the sunlight, I would get blisters on any part of my body that was exposed. And within a week or two, I had part of my training was I had to build a special coffin that had certain dimensions and certain angles in it and the whole bit. And then I would sleep in that coffin in the daytime, and then I'd come out at night, and I ended up getting a job with the Milwaukee Sentinel delivering newspapers for the third shift. So I went to work at 11 and got off work at, like 6 or 7. And that way I always got home before the sun rose. And I couldn't be out in the sunlight. And I couldn't eat anything. And for like probably a year and a half, 2 years, I can't remember which, it was kind of a blur, I existed on nothing but human blood and Roman Catholic communion. I couldn't even drink water.
Why Roman Catholic?
Water, I'd throw it up.
Why Roman Catholic communion?
Well, because it was all part of the church. And see, there was this weird, twisted version of Christianity which said, okay, Jesus said in the Gospel of John, that that anyone who eats my flesh and drinks my blood will never die but will live forever. And they claim that Jesus started the vampire cult.
Oh, man.
Lazarus. Now, listen, this makes a weird kind of sense if you don't really understand the Bible, if you're just a lay person who has virtually no Bible understanding. And, you know, there's that line in the end of John's Gospel where it talks about how, you know, that Jesus says about John, well, the beloved disciple, he says, well, you know, what is it to you if I will that he remain until I come again? You know, and of course there's this sort of ambiguity there, like, well, did he say that this means that John the beloved is going to still be alive in the second coming of the Lord? And so we were taught that John was actually one of the very first vampire initiates, and that he was like the fountainhead of modern-day vampirism, and he was still alive to this very day, and that Lazarus was another one.
Okay.
And so, you know, it makes sense in a strange sort of way.
Now, you never died an actual death.
No. And I was told that once I had taken this virus into me, it would be a gradual process of getting more and more vampire-like, and then when I finally passed away, 3 days later, just like Lazarus, except of course he was dead for 5 days, but never mind the technicalities, I would rise up as a full-blown Nosferatu, a full-blown undead.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
The really creepy thing about all this is that when I'd be around people, I could actually hear their heartbeats. I could actually see the pulses, and it would be very erotic to me. I'd like watch the necks of people. You know how usually guys, if they're very carnal, if they look at a woman, they'll look at other parts of their anatomy. Well, for me, it was their necks. And I could actually feel the pulse, and I could smell the blood. And there's actually like an arousal response, except my teeth would start to grow.
Your teeth would start to grow.
Teeth that are called, like your canine teeth would get long and sharp. And that was a sign that I was getting ready to feed.
Now, could you tell the differences in blood types? I mean, was there one that you preferred more than the other? I mean, I know that sounds...
No.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, and this is a funny thing, because you see this every now and then, and usually they're comedy vampire movies, but I every now and then I could pick up the fact that the person who had the blood, that was near me, was still a virgin.
Really?
Sexually. And that blood was especially prized.
Now, could you...
It was... I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Could you tell if a woman was menstruating?
I'm sorry?
Could you tell if a woman was menstruating that was around you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And that was disgusting. I mean, you would never drink that sort of blood if you were a vampire. Now, on the other hand, if you were a Satanist, you'd make it into a sacrament.
Whoa.
I mean, it's weird, but like Aleister Crowley would actually have a mass in which the sacrament was like cakes that were made, and they were made with menstrual blood in them.
Oh my gosh!
And then you'd drink wine and have these cakes, and it was like a blasphemous parody of the Catholic Mass.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like another guest of ours earlier on, Mr. Sean Manchester, and he was talking about vampires being a parody of Jesus' eternal life and Satan's eternal unlife. You know, that the whole thing is really a mockery.
One of the old popular icons, a symbol of Jesus from the Middle Ages, was the image of a pelican who cuts open her breast, and you see all these little baby pelicans feeding from the blood coming out of her breast. And that was a symbol of the fact that Jesus' side was pierced and his blood gushed out, and that we were healed and redeemed by that blood. And this whole, I mean, a lot of different writers, I mean, I don't think this is the original with me, referred to Dracula as the Black Christ. Because if you read the story of Dracula, he's like an antichrist figure. And see, we actually believed that Dracula was still alive, that he was like the intermediate head of our entire cult, and he reigned from over in Wallachia. And that he was like kind of a Christ figure who died for the sins of humanity and then rose again as this undead, patriarch.
No, did you have to? I know you mentioned in your DVD. Tell people about the earth that you had to carry in your shoes and in your.
Well, it's a pretty common belief among people that study vampirism that vampires need, when they rest during the day, they need to rest on holy ground. And because for most of us, we can't afford to buy our own cemetery or our own abbey like Dracula did in the original novel, so what I did was all it had to be was holy earth for my homeland. And so my wife and I went to the hometown, I won't say the name, in Iowa where I was raised, and we went out to the Catholic cemetery because, of course, that's consecrated ground. A bishop comes out there and blesses the cemetery and schleps holy water all over it and everything. And so we got a couple of garbage bags full of dirt, and we took it home, and this was all done before I actually made the transformation. This is one of the things I had to do by way of preparation for being initiated. And then we laid that in the bottom of the coffin, and then, of course, you could put like a little satin, padding over it. And then I also had to put it in the soles of my shoes, because otherwise I could not walk across running water.
Really?
Yeah. Like, for example, downtown Milwaukee has the Wisconsin, I think it's the Wisconsin River, I forget, maybe it's the Milwaukee River, anyhow, goes right, bisects the whole downtown. And unless if I was in a car, I could be driven over it. But I could not ambulate across running water.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because running water is a symbol of purity. It's a symbol of the waters of baptism, cleansing, refreshing. Jesus said he who believeth in me, out of his belly shall flow fountains of living water.
Now, could you? What would happen if you tried to do that without that?
I couldn't do it.
You just physically, you were immobilized.
Yeah, just like, for example, I could not enter somebody's house unless I was invited.
Really?
And this was weird a couple of times because, and this all goes back to the idea that, and again, none of this is in the Bible, but it's like sort of part of Catholic folklore and Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox folklore, the idea that evil cannot just invade you. You have to invite it in.
Yeah.
And there's a certain truth in that.
I don't know if you've seen the film The Visitation, Frank Peretti's, based on Frank Peretti's novel.
No, I don't think I have.
It's actually really good. There's a scene where this being is coming through and he wants to heal people, but they have to let him in by giving him. He asks for their hand, and they have to give it to him before he can perform this miracle on them.
Yeah, that's very much the same idea. And it was weird. A couple of times we'd go to somebody's house, and my wife did not get into most of this stuff. She had more sense than I did. And they'd open the door. And how some people say, well, come in, and some people don't,
Yeah.
And she'd walk in, and I'd have to stand there like a dork, and until finally they'd say, well, come in, like, what are you waiting for, you dummy? And then I could walk in, and then, after that, I could come and go as I please.
Now, could you ask them, can you say, can I come in? And they say yes, and then you would be okay? Oh, okay. Eventually,
I would have done that, but usually people just... they after about a few seconds, it's kind of an awkward moment, and they said, "Well, come in."
Now, how did religious symbols affect you? Crosses, crucifixes, holy water.
Well, that's the funny thing, because see, every day I celebrated the Mass.
Yeah.
And every day I took communion. But I was not bothered, and I think that's more Hollywood, by like the crucifix or other religious symbols.
What about garlic?
Well, that's another matter. You see, garlic, Allium sativa, is a blood purifier. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it actually has radioactive isotopes in it. Okay. Naturally. If you eat raw garlic, that's why it's so good for you. And I could walk into, like, the produce section of a store, and they might have a rope of garlic 15 feet away, and I would feel it. And I couldn't get within more than about 5 feet of that garlic, and I just get the heebie-jeebies. Huh. I couldn't stand the smell. And the funny thing was, before I went through all this, I love garlic. And it drove me crazy because I wanted, like, garlic bread, and I wanted pizza, and all the stuff that people want, and I couldn't eat any of it, not just because it had garlic in it, because I couldn't eat, period. And you have no idea how monotonous it is to exist on nothing but communion wafers and wine and human blood for 2 years.
How much blood did you drink a day?
Well, that's just it. See, in Catholic theology, the how should I put this? The the communion is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And so I believed, and I was taught, that when I drank that chalice full of wine, I was drinking an entire human body's worth of blood.
Kind of like the whole transubstantiation idea.
Exactly, yeah, which is still taught in the Catholic Church to this day. And so that would usually suffice. But see, the problem is that like any addiction, you need more. And you need more, and you need more. And just like, an alcoholic starts out with a 6-pack, and before you know it, he's drinking a 12-pack, and before you know it, he's drinking a case of beer.
Yeah.
Well, with me, I was needing more and more blood, and what had happened is I'd have a half dozen women or so in my coven that were at the higher levels, and they were more than happy to let me tap their veins and drink their blood. But I would be very careful never to take more than maybe a cupful.
Huh.
And a couple times I got carried away with bloodlust, and one of them even passed out. And I was getting really scared because it was getting more and more. I mean, I never told anybody this. I didn't even tell my wife this because I didn't want to worry her. But I was increasingly worried that sometime I just get so overcome with, the lust of blood that I would rip somebody's throat out and just, end up in a loony bin or locked up in prison for life or something. I could have been Jeffrey Dahmer before Jeffrey Dahmer came along.
That's true. Now,
I tell you, Wisconsin breeds some very strange people.
I reckon so. Now, listen, were you the only vampire initiate in your particular, church, or were there other people following the same path as you? And if that's so, what happened to them?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, I was the only person in the city. There were several of them down in Chicago. But in terms of the vampire type thing, I was the only one, other than, of course, my mentor, that was into that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess really the other money question I want to ask, did you ever meet real vampires who had gone through the ritual, had died, and come back? Did you ever meet?
See, that's the problem. Supposedly, this man who brought me into it was one. But how do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the devil can do some wondrous things. Like this guy had no pulse.
Oh, really?
His body was as cold as ice. But yet there are yogis, they're called fakirs over in India that can do that.
That's true.
They can stop their heartbeats for days at a time. And I think it's done by demonic power.
Well, did you ever see this?
I had no way of knowing if this guy claimed to be 150 years old.
Yeah.
But there was no way of knowing that. I mean, he didn't look a day over 30.
Did you ever see him do anything that was, severely supernatural?
Yeah.
Well, he was very strong, let me just put it that way. He could pick me up with one hand.
Wow.
But you see, again, there's people who are possessed can do that.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's all sorts of weird things that people who totally... And you see, you've got to realize, by this time in my life, I had literally begged hundreds and hundreds of demons to come into me. I was so overcome with the demonic that I'm amazed that the Lord saved me. But that's amazing grace,
Yeah.
But so I can't really say with any degree of certitude that there is a real, like in the Hollywood version, because you see, I was told that some of the stuff that's in like Hollywood is not even true.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the religious icons, or being able to turn into a bat, or turn into mist and fly under the door, and things like that. That's all stuff that Bram Stoker made up.
What about the mirror thing, the reflection?
That never occurred to me. I mean, I never had that happen because I was still alive.
Yeah.
And I never had an opportunity to see if that were the case. I mean, when we were in a ritual chamber and I had this stuff going on, there was no mirror in the room. But it would make sense because, see, let's face it, evil is selfishness.
Yeah.
And vampirism is like the ultimate sort of selfishness because you're a bloodsucker.
Uh-huh.
And so it's almost like the metaphor, if you want to call it that, is that this person is so selfish and so evil that he's like a spiritual black hole. And if you know what a black hole is, it's a phenomenon in space that is so dense and so heavy gravity that even light can't escape from it. And it's like, for that reason, supposedly, these beings don't reflect in a mirror. But I can't testify to that. See, the whole thing could be a demonic deception. But I know what I went through.
You talk about werewolves, and I know in the DVD you mentioned one case where I believe your wife and another friend was actually chased by a werewolf or stalked.
Well, actually, they were threatened by one when they were in. My wife and her sister were in this house we were staying in the Seattle area when I was in ministry there, and yeah, we had a werewolf pacing around the house. I was out of town speaking in Utah at the time, and they were just praying up a storm, and that thing could not get in because the power of God kept it out, even though, I mean, they said they looked out the second-story window, and it was like a split-level house, and this thing was looking at them in the eye-to-eye, and they could see its red eyes, and it would have had to have been at least 8 feet tall.
Now, do you have demonic occurrences around you now that mess with you, that torment you, that No,
not hardly ever.
Oh, okay.
Because, see, very early on, I had some good discipleship. I had some good preachers that really trained me how to do spiritual warfare, and especially I want to give credit to Ed Decker, who was the guy that kind of took me under his wing with Saints Alive and Jesus. I worked in his ministry for 5 years, and he really taught me how to do spiritual warfare, and that the key thing is that if you stay close to the Lord and pray every day and really spend a lot of serious time in prayer and Bible study, that then the devil can't get near you. You just keep building up like a reservoir of light and grace within yourself. And not that every now and then something doesn't hit us. It does. We've had physical threats on our lives. We've been shot at. We've been run off the road. All kinds of weird stuff. My wife especially has been attacked in the area of her health. But yet, we virtually never have anything really get by the barriers that the Lord has put up. And I know when something does get by it, it's because He's teaching us something, or He's doing something to try us, and to kind of like what happened with Job.
Yeah, certainly.
Now we've got over 23,000 internet listeners online. We're also out live in the Arizona area, in the Phoenix metro area. We're also out in Omaha, Nebraska, and a lot of other places in Australia. So if you guys are listening live tonight, please give us a call, 800-960-2289, and talk with Bill Schnoebelen about his experience in the world of the vampire and all the other experiences he's had. We just don't have enough time to cover it all, Bill. I mean, we've got virtually 19 minutes left here of the program.
I haven't even mentioned Mormons.
Yeah, you want to talk about Mormonism
the
for a little bit?
here.
Yeah, the Illuminati, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you pick.
Okay. Trent?
Oh, man. The Illuminati has always been fascinating to me, so let's do that.
All right.
Well, okay. Sometime right about the time just before I got involved with the vampire thing, I was approached. I got a letter in the mail inviting me to join the Illuminati.
They sent you a letter?
Yes. Huh. And, of course, I thought it was a joke.
Oh, yeah.
But they said, what you do is, and this is the funny thing, you take this letter and you sign it in blood.
Oh.
And you bury the letter, and someone will contact you. And they didn't even tell me where to bury the letter.
Okay.
I could choose. And so I buried it somewhere, because I figured this is some friend of mine who was playing a joke, but it had a very nice letterhead, very under key, The only thing was, I'll never forget it to this day, it said, Illuminati Ordnung, which is German. And then it said, the world's oldest established conspiracy.
Wow.
And anyway, so I buried the letter, and within a week, somebody brought the letter back to me. And that was when I was brought through some of this training, and then I had this experience which I already alluded to, where I was taken in this weird journey and had somebody stick their talon in my forehead and fill me with the light of Lucifer. But, you know, and people ask you, well, why did that happen? Well, see, what you got to understand is there's several ways you can get into the Illuminati. It's not like something where you see an ad in the back of Fate magazine and fill it out and send in $5 and you become a member of the Illuminati. No, what it is first of all, you could be born into it. There's many old mossy money families that are Illuminati families. Or what happened with me is because I was a medium, I was a trance channeler, I had these spirit guides speaking through me. And when I would go through my Masonic work, and this is important to understand, they would whisper in my ear, as it were, and tell me to say certain things at certain times. Because Masonry is all about signs and countersigns. It's about you say something and I say something and you say something back. Just like you're playing spy, you know.
Right, right.
And because of some of the responses I gave, as even a young Mason, just a third-degree Mason, I was shunted onto different directions, in different tracks, if you will. And I was brought to the attention of these evil beings that lorded over the world. And I kept doing that. I kept following the advice of these spirit guides. And finally, I was brought to the attention of this man who was to be my mentor, the Master H, who would come and he would teach me stuff. And ultimately, he prepared me, and he was the one who was standing at my side when I had the Luciferian initiation.
Wow.
And at that point, it was like my body was infused with dark light. That's the only way I can describe it. And I got increasingly, my wife says she doesn't believe this, but I got kind of evil. And that was all that my better side could do to keep me from being a real north end of a southbound horse. And being very evil and being very selfish and being very cruel. And fortunately, the Lord brought me out of that. And I'll tell you, the only way you can get out of the Illuminati is either by dying or by the power of the blood of the Lamb. Because otherwise, they'll kill you. Because, see, if you even think about leaving, about defecting, or about betraying them in any way, you have so many demons in you, they'll just start hitting your brain, and you'll get the world's worst headache. And if you don't stop and get back in line, they'll blow up your brain. You'll drop over dead of a cerebral hemorrhage. It's a real good way to keep secrets.
Oh, certainly. Now, these Illuminati did they follow the traditional myth of being incredibly well-connected, powerful individuals, really high up levels of society, or were they more egalitarian and open to a lot of different people? From your experience.
Well, that depends. You see, that we had people who were some of the wealthiest people in the Midwest that were involved with it. But some of them, like, I wasn't wealthy. I mean, I had nothing. I mean, that's the funny thing. I mean, everybody says, I even read this. There's this website that has a very anti-Bill Schnoebelen article on it in terms of Masonry. And they say, oh, he just joined the Masons to get rich. Well, that's a real laugh because I never got hardly a red cent out of it. You know, and I'm not saying that because I'm bitter. I'm just saying it because, you know, if you demonstrate, I should say, a certain spiritual aptitude toward the darkness, that will also draw you into the Illuminati. But yeah, I met people who were household words, whose names were household words. I met people who were presidents of the United States that were in the Illuminati. What I was told is that basically when you become president, I don't care if you're George Bush, George W. Bush, or Bill Clinton, basically you could be the nicest guy in the world, the nicest Christian in the world, or you could be a typical political sleaze. They sit you down in the Oval Office, and there's this guy who's called the Unknown Man. And there's one over every continent on Earth. And he basically runs the show. And he sits down with the president and he says, Mr. President, you're going to do this and this and this and this, and you're going to do this at this time, and then he's going to have an agenda. And I don't care what the polls say. I don't care what your colleagues say. I don't care what your advisors say. This is what you're going to do at this point in your administration. And if you don't do it, I will just direct your attention to what happened to John F. Kennedy and what happened to Richard Nixon. And basically, that's why nothing ever changes. That's why whether you've got a Democrat or a Republican in the White House, you know, basically we get the same old, you know. And I, you know, I'm not trying to be cynical about the political process, but people have to understand that there are powers behind the throne, you know, like the Wizard of Oz that hides behind the curtain and that manipulates things. And anybody who doesn't think that's true, all I have to do is go and read the second Psalm.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously.
So that just makes me wonder, though. It makes me think.
So then, I guess briefly, very briefly, what are the goals of the Illuminati, from what you understand, being involved with them? What do they want?
Well, they basically are anti-clerical in the sense of anti-clergy. They're anti-Christianity. They're anti-national sovereignty. They believe that the world would be better off if it was all national boundaries were dissolved, all religions were destroyed. In fact, if you want to listen to the Illuminati national anthem, listen to the song "Imagine" by John Lennon. And anyway,
well, Bill, I hate to interrupt you, but we've got a caller. Hang on just a second.
Oh, good.
Caller, you're on live. Worldly Unexplained.
Hi, it's John calling from Messina, New York.
Our biggest fan. How you doing, John?
Oh, I'm good, peachy. Quick question. I probably tuned in late again, but I want to ask about the Freemasons. Does he think the Freemasons is a very evil organization?
Yeah, we've covered this, John.
Oh, here we go. Crap, okay.
Well, the short answer is yes. The organization is evil, but most of the men in it are good people who are basically deceived. They don't really understand the Luciferian Baal worship nature of the Masonic organization.
Okay, how about like the Knights of Columbus? That's a lot different, right?
Well, it's only different in the sense that it's Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
But the Knights of Columbus take oaths in which they swear they will destroy Protestants, that they will extirpate and root out the Protestant religion whenever possible. And they swear these oaths on the Bible.
These are the guys with the Tootsie Rolls, right? About the Tootsie Rolls? The Knights of Columbus? You know, when you're a kid, they give you out little Tootsie Rolls.
I have no idea.
Oh, I never must have gotten a Tootsie Roll. And I went to Catholic school all my life.
I went to Baptist school.
Oh, well, see, there you go.
Oh, well. The evil behind the Tootsie Roll. John,
yeah, I would say that the Knights of Columbus are not quite as bad as the Masons because they're more modern. They're not quite so anciently steeped in evil. But, of course, then there's the problem that they're Catholics.
Yeah.
And that they're serving a false prophet and a false theology and all of that. But, of course, so are the Masons.
Yes. Is there any organization worse than the Masons that could be more evil?
Oh, sure. The Illuminati, the Skull and Bones, the Bohemian Grove, the Bilderbergers, the OTO. I mean, I could keep going. But, yeah.
Skull and
There's
Bones.
A lot of worse stuff than the Masons.
Hey, let's talk about the Skull and Bones.
Yeah, it seems like every United States president has belonged to that.
Well, a lot of them have, and of course, as many of you know, in the last election, both Kerry and Bush are bonesmen. And now, I was never a Skull and Bones guy because I never went to Yale, but as I understand it from third-party information, it's a very sinister, evil organization that basically has the chains of power in virtually every part of the government, both state and federal. I mean, if you look at typically the leaders of the Pentagon, the leaders of the White House staff, they're either all Skull and Bones or they're all Mormons.
Wow.
Which is an odd combination. And, of course, there's, like, for example, J. Edgar Hoover is a 33rd degree Mason.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that, too.
Oh, wow. Well, does that do that for you,
yes.
John?
All right, John. Thanks for calling. We're going to have the archives up after I finish the bar exam.
So,
I've been too busy.
Oh, thank you.
I've got, like, 4 weeks of this crap to put up, I think. Something crazy like that, yeah. It'll be up in the next couple weeks, though.
Wait, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks John.
Yep.
All right.
All right, we got 7 minutes.
We got 7 minutes. So we're going to take up 2 of them, and then we're going to give you the final, Bill. But, well, anyway, going back to the whole skull and bones thing, I think there was even a comment made by one of the moderators for one of the chats. Isn't that right, guys? They were talking about, like, one of the moderators was saying, well, you know, they had made a comment about skull and bones or something, and one of the candidates kind of laughed it off, and then they went on to answer the question without answering the question.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember that. It's just really...
Well, actually, it was Matthews on, or Kerry when he was on Matthews Meet the Press, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe it was Russert, I can't remember. That he was asked if he remembered George Bush from Skull and Bones because they're only 2 years apart.
Oh.
And he said, oh no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Kerry, it was Bush. And he said he didn't remember any John Kerry.
Of course not. So do you think the election's rigged, Bill?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all I can tell you is that the Illuminati have an agenda. And up until the Second Gulf War, every war was predicted by them 100 years ago.
Really?
And that tells me that either they rig the election or else they make sure that whoever gets into office toes the line. You know, because people often wonder, well, why won't he have... Now, there's exceptions. You know, like, I think Ronald Reagan did a few amazing things. But, you know, for the most part, it seems like you got a Democrat, you got a Republican. Nothing seems to change, you know. We got the same weird judges, we got the same weird laws, you know, and all of that. And I think it's partly because these people are afraid, these political leaders are afraid of tinkering with anything for fear, like why Nixon was brought down, I was told, is that he went to China early. They had a timetable, and he was supposed to go to China at a different time than when he ended up going. But see, he had such a strong mandate. His second term, I think he carried 49 states.
Wow.
And so he thought he was so powerful that he could actually thumb his nose at the Illuminati, because he was a high-level Illuminatus, Nixon was. Huh. That's why he kept going around flashing the V sign.
Huh.
And yet they brought him down, as we all know. He came crashing down like Humpty Dumpty. And that was intended as an object lesson.
Well, what about what about Bill Clinton in the last the whole impeachment proceedings and all that?
Well, I don't know, because see, at that time I was a Christian.
Yeah. Okay.
I got saved in 1984, so I don't have the inside knowledge, but I know that Bill Clinton was very well connected within the Illuminati. There are even rumors, which you may or may not have heard, that he was the illegitimate son of Nelson Rockefeller. And because, you know, he's an orphan.
Our producer's shaking his head now.
I've heard that one too, yeah.
Other people say he's the illegitimate son of Baron Rothschild, so who knows? Anyhow, these are all like rumors and stuff, but the point is that I think in many cases, if these political leaders, whether they're governors or senators or presidents, if they get out of line, they get the geopolitical equivalent of a newspaper smacked across their nose. And if they continue to rebel and to not follow the Illuminati agenda, they will be either politically destroyed like Nixon was, or they'll be killed like Kennedy was.
So you think this goes down into all aspects of government, even some of the state and local stuff?
Well, I'm not sure it gets down to the local level.
But state level, definitely?
But I think probably at the state level and certainly at the national level. Because you've got to realize, spiritually speaking, there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy of evil and a hierarchy of good. Like, I don't know what city you're in.
We're in Kernersville, North Carolina.
Okay. Well, every city has over it a principality.
Yeah.
An angelic being that was set there by the Almighty to watch over that city. It's a high-level, quasi-angelic being, a celestial being. And at the same time, that same city has an evil principality over it. And they are in a constant tug-of-war. I mean, it's like a Frank Peretti novel. And that's true at the state level, and it's true at the national level, and it's also true with the major religions.
Wow.
Well, Bill,
you got 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
So some final words.
Final words. Give us your final thing. WithOneAccord.org.
One thing I didn't get to say is that in spite of all this evil stuff that I was involved in, and I got darker than most people will ever get, but one lady prayed for me, and because of that one woman that cared enough and was brave enough to pray for someone who was a professed Satanist, within a few days my whole life was ruined. I lost all my magical power, and admittedly I had to take a detour through Mormonism to discover that I was a sinner and needed a savior, but all the bad stuff was eventually swept out of my life, and no matter what the devil tried to do to me, Jesus Christ was able to save me. Excuse me, and there's nothing. I don't care where you're at as a listener. You may feel that you're wicked and evil and you've done things that are very horrible. There's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot forgive if you ask him to. And if you're in fear of the devil because of what has been said tonight, don't be. Because as I love to tell people, my dad can beat up their dad.
Fair enough.
And you can check out Bill's website, BillSchnoebelen.com. And if you need to know how to spell that, just go to the guests link on our website, and you'll be able to click on that worldoftheunexplained.com, click on the guest link, BillSchnoebelen.com. You've got a lot of things up there posted about how one finds salvation and other things like that. And you can also purchase as many books and this DVD that we've been talking about tonight,
which is on our website,
which you can get the first hour of for 99 cents on our website. Interview with an ex-vampire. Is that do it for you, Bill? Is that everything?
That's great.
Okay.
All right. Well, Bill, we hate that we got you late.
Yeah.
Timing conflicts happen from time to time.
Well, I'm sorry. I was ready to go this morning.
7 a.m. Yeah.
Wow. Usually I ask for a number or something, and I can call people, and somehow I didn't get that or I lost it. But well, we got most of it in.
Definitely.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for being on the show tonight.
It's been a pleasure, Bill.
Bet.
All right.
Okay. God bless you.
God bless you. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye.
All right, that was Bill Schnoebelen there. Wow,
yeah,
that was it's hard to try to jam pack like all that stuff into one 2-hour show.
We didn't even cover it. Like I said, we didn't
even cover the Mormon thing.
No, the Mormon thing was quite interesting.
You want to know about it? I've got the DVD.
Smith,
yeah. Joseph Smith.
Oh, excuse me.
That's our producer showing off his knowledge of the Mormon faith.
Oh my gosh! Well, we gotta roll on like band, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I said that, but anyway,
we out like 3 G's.
Yeah, it's Audi like 3 G's.
Yeah, we got to get out of here because we're running over our time a little bit, and we don't want to make our people mad. So, anyway, next week, Adam Go Riley. I'm going to be out of town, but I will be in the chat room.
Scott Luck. He's taking the big B.
Number 2. Second time's a charm, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We hope. All right. So, guys, we'll see you next week. Well, we'll be in the chat room next week, me, Chuck, and Trent. And we'll see you there, and we'll listen to a pre-record we have with Adam Go Riley. Check it out. And until next time, I'm Jay Scott, your only JD DJ on the Omni Sound Radio 1 Network.
And I'm Trent Lackey. We're coming to you from Kernersville, North Carolina, where, as always, it's a small town. And as always, we talk about big things.
Big things.
Yep. Like big, weighty subjects, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Get your mind
out of the gutter.
Okay, we'll see you later, guys.
Take care.